Psalm 23. All right, to begin, who's actually dealt with a sheep before? Okay, not many. Well, I've got a real simple thing for you to remember. Sheep are dumb. They're as dumb as it gets. When I was helping at my church's summer school, we took all of the kids to the San Francisco Zoo, and they had a petting zoo where there were a bunch of sheep and goats. Wow, were they dumb. As soon as we got in, all the sheep swarmed us. And my immediate thought was, why the heck are they all around me? They knocked over a kid, and the kid got up, and they were fine. But I just remember thinking, how dumb are these sheep? And then I had to think back to my 4th grade year at my church and went, oh, they're expecting food. I was hoping that within the 10 years that I had not been there, maybe the sheep had gone slightly bit smarter. Nope, still dumb as a rock. But then that got me thinking, sheep really do need a shepherd. They need someone to take care of them, because if there was even the slightest promise of food, they would definitely walk into the wolf's mouth, thinking that there was green grass there. And that always got me thinking that a shepherd is always needed for these sheep. And then I think back to when I was watching those kids at summer school and realized they're just as smart as sheep. Because they're going to do everything wrong, and they're not going to know that it is wrong, and they need someone there to care for them. Make sure that they're fed, make sure that they have water, make sure that they take a nap at the right time. Kids need their own shepherds, but we don't call them shepherds, we call them teachers. And that always reminds me that even I need a shepherd. Thankfully, I don't have to rely on someone twice my age, because I can go buy myself food, I can go buy myself water, but I still need someone to take care of me. And to me, that someone is God. He is my shepherd. And like I said, I'm not going to do anything new today, but I want you to understand why Psalm 23 is so important. Starting at verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. Or if you have the new edition, it says, I shall lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. I want you guys to rethink what green pastures means. It's not like you're in Nebraska and you just see this field of wheat. That's not what a green pasture is in Israel. Who's been to Israel? You guys know that there's 3 different climates that Israel has. Rocks with green, and then trees. That's kind of about it. So when we think of green pastures, we're not thinking lush fields, but it's kind of like you go out into the parking lot and there's grass spewing up in the asphalt. Sorry, not grass, weeds. That's kind of like what it's like in Israel when we talk about green pastures. But what the Lord is doing here for these sheep is he's taking them to a place where there is so much green that they never have to worry about having any food. That there's always going to be enough, and it's always going to be plentiful. Now, you guys remember how I said sheep are dumb? Well, when it comes to water, they're even dumber. If a sheep goes to the river and it's a roaring river, the sheep's not going to think, oh, I shouldn't drink there, that's dangerous. They're going to go into the water and get zipped by the waves. And all the other sheep are going to go, huh, that's weird. Anyways, I'm going to drink. Obviously, not good. That's why a shepherd is needed to be there. But in the calm waters, in the quiet waters that's mentioned here in the psalm, don't think so much as this is a river that is at the calm part. Think of it more as a secluded place where you don't have to worry about predators attacking you because you're naturally defended. And the water is calm so that you don't have to worry about getting zipped away by the tide, because the water is calm enough where you can go there and get all that you need. That's the calm waters in this psalm. And to me, that shows that God will provide for everything. He'll protect me, he'll feed me, he'll water me, and he'll love me. Now, I want you guys to think of some stuff right now. Think of your favorite dish. Whether it's homemade or from a restaurant, think of your favorite dish. Now, who made that dish for you? I want you to think about that. Now, I want you to think about how the ingredients got there to be made for that dish. And I want you to think about how those ingredients got into the store for them to buy. Now I want you to think about how those ingredients were made. And at the end of that point is God. Because none of us can make anything grow. None of us can force anything to grow, but God can. Now I want you to think about your favorite piece of clothing that you wear. Well, how'd you get it? Well, how were those materials gotten? Well, God made them for us. He made them available so that you could have them. I want you to think about your house. How'd you get the money to buy it? How'd you get that job? How the materials for that house, how were they gathered, and how were they made and grown? Well, God did all that. He led that windy way so that you could have enough money to buy that house so that you could live there. And that you could have that job to have that money. And he made sure that the carpenters and the contractors had enough materials to then make the house for you to buy. And these are great. He provides for all of our physical needs. All of our food, our clothing, places to stay, our cars, the tires that sometimes go flat. He provides for them all. But he doesn't just provide for the things we can physically touch. I want you to think about your bestest friend in the whole wide world. I want you to think about that windy path that eventually led you to meeting somehow. It might seem like a series of random events, but God ordained everything so that you two would finally meet at that one point. I want you to think about your parents, how their lives were all crazy before they met and then eventually had you. How if it hadn't been at that right time, at that right place, you wouldn't exist. But you do, because God ordained that. Speaking of which, I want you to think of your significant other. Whether that be your boyfriend or girlfriend, your spouse or fiance. I want you to think about what led you to meeting and finally meeting. Whether you had good or crappy exes, no matter what, you ended up with that person right here, right now. I want you to realize that God organized all that for you. Because God meets not only our physical needs, but also all of our emotional needs. People to love, people to cry with, people to hug. I also want you to think about faith. Because we have this inherent need to worship. We can read throughout the Bible, as we're already reading in Deuteronomy, how there is this need to worship something. And God has provided that for us. But moreover than that, we're not all good. Who here is a perfect being? I'm going to keep my hands down because I'm not. None of us are. I want you to think of every sin that you've done, every command of God's you have not followed. And I want you to think about how Jesus came and died for you, how all your sins have been forgiven, how you have been saved because he loves you. I think the first verse is great because it says, "You are my shepherd." It's a lot kinder than saying, "I'm a dumb sheep." But I think that's a better way to put it. I'm a dumb sheep, but God loves me anyways. God provides for our every single need, all of them. Our physical, our emotional, our worshiping needs. He provides for them all. But he does more than just provides for them. He guides us through everything. He's given us ways that we can follow him. And he constantly shows us the right way. Just as a shepherd will lead the flock to greener fields or to calm waters or to a place to rest, God will lead us too. Verse 3. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. He's a great shepherd, especially for us because he wrote everything down. We don't have to constantly ask someone, right, what did God say that I need to do in this situation? We already have it written down, and we've had it written down for millennia. He's told us how to live. Whether by kosher laws or just how to do things, he's told us how to live. He's told us how to love people, how to worship, and how to treat each other. He's shown us what to do when he brought Jesus. And when he tells us how to do that, he also shows it through the Ten Commandments. You're to love your neighbor, not to hurt them. You're to protect them and not spite them. You're supposed to bolster them, not tear them down. You're supposed to protect them and make sure that they and the people around them are loyal to everyone. He shows us how we're supposed to live. And he tells us how to love. Simply put, love your neighbor and love God. How do you love your neighbor? You love them with everything. And that's how you love God, by loving unconditionally, without a second thought about yourself, because that's what God does. He gave everything for us, even when we don't deserve it, because we're dumb little sheep. He loves us so much. And he tells us how to worship too. He tells us that we have to worship him, but not like the others, because he's not like others. We don't have to constantly be sacrificing to appease him, because he's already happy with us. Even when we sin, all he wants is for us to go back to him, to have him be our shepherd and not someone else. He tells us how to love, how to live, and how to worship. And he puts it all down for us because he knows that we'll forget. But he always says, it's okay that you forgot. As long as you come back, that's all that matters at the end. And there are times where that's hard, where we're going to go through that dark place. But God's always going to be there with us. He will always remind us that he is there, because he shows how he does that. Verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Shadow of Death is a great title. But as we walk through life, we're not going to be constantly overshadowed by death. I think the Hebrew kind of is a little harder to translate in this, but it's more akin to, even though I walk through the valley of like extreme danger. I think that's a better way to say life. Because who here has lived a very safe life? I haven't. I've been stupid. I've almost gotten into 3 different car crashes. And I haven't been driving for that long. But even through it all, God's still been there with me. But it's not just there for any of our physical dangers. He's also there for our emotional turmoils too. Back in my 3rd year at Concordia, I got hit with some really hard news, and it sucked. I was told that my cousin Elaine had died, and that I can't go to her funeral because that wouldn't be her wish. She wanted me in school. And I remember I was texting a friend, and I kind of offhandedly mentioned it because I thought, you know what, whatever, I'm not going to deal with it. I'll bother with it later. And I remember she said, you're coming to my dorm now. And my first thought was, shoot, I still got Hebrew homework. You can wait 15 minutes, I'll finish these problems. So then I go over, not even thinking about everything because my brain's in such a fog because I just experienced this death. And she asked me, are you okay? And in my infinite wisdom, my first thought was, yeah, I'm going to be big and bold. I'm going to say, yeah, I'm doing exactly fine. And as soon as I said those words, I started crying. And I remember that she pulled me in, and I just cried with her for half an hour. Now, her and I had a falling out, and life happens. But the one thing I will always remember is the fact that I wasn't thankful for the friendship I had with her, but I was thankful that I had someone there to cry with me. That I wasn't alone in my moment of grief. And I always thank God for that because I wasn't alone. That ministry of presence is one of the most important things that we as Christians get to do. But sometimes it's hard to remember that because life always gets in the way. Sometimes we get fired from a job, and then we start job hunting, and it takes months and months and months, and we don't get any bites. There's no job that says, hey, we want you. And the world starts looking bleak. Sometimes we experience the death of a family member, and it was someone that we loved and cared about. And now our world's been shattered, and everything is different because they're not there. Nothing is the same now, and it will never be. Or sometimes we experience depression, and we get in this spiral, and we just circle down and down and down. And the world seems so bleak and hopeless, like there's never going to be anything good ever again. But it's in each of these moments that there's always someone there. When we're job hunting, there's always that one person that goes, let me try and talk to some people and see what I can do. Sometimes when that family member dies, there's that person that's just there with us, crying with us. They might be sad about it too, but at least they're there with you, even if they don't have the right words. Or when we're in that depressive spiral, there's always someone there that asks, how are you doing? And they actually genuinely care. And it's each of those moments that I always remember that God shows his face in that time. That even in our bleakest and our saddest, God is there with us. And that's what we get to do as Christians. We get to be there for everyone else because God is always there for us. We're never alone. I want you to remember this as we continue. Because God's constant providing, his constant guidance, and his constant presence is something he always does. And he does this in the midst of everything, in the good, the bad, the ugly, the boring, the normal. He's always there. Verse 5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I think verse 5 is the most important verse. It's not my favorite verse. I love verse 4. That's my favorite verse. I think verse 5 is the most important to remember who our shepherd is, because he will always provide for us. He'll lead us to those green pastures. He'll lead us to the calm water. And he'll provide for us in the midst of our fights, in the midst of our struggles. He's right there with us. And when he anoints our head with oil, it's not that our heads get sticky. It's him putting his thumb and marking us, saying, you're mine. You're my dumb little sheep. Because it's always easy to go, I'm alone in this. I'm struggling. I know better than everyone else. But it's hard to remember that God claims us even in that moment. And it's easy to forget. But he still cares for us and he still loves for us. He still provides us with a place to rest, with people to love, with food and with liquids. He always provides for our needs. And even in the midst of the struggles, when we're walking through that valley of extreme danger, God's still there with us. He's still guiding us. He's still saying, it's okay, we'll get through this. It's going to be rough. But I'm here with you. And it's because of that that I will always dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Because I've put my faith in other things. I've put my trust in things that are things I can hold and things that I can trust. And nothing's ever gone right. There's always been even more struggles than what I had before, thinking, oh, I know better. But when I turn to God, when I put my trust in him, things work out. It's not like magically they change overnight and now all my problems are gone. But one thing leads to another, and it always turns out right because my trust is in God, not in myself. I trust that my shepherd will protect me and he will hold me. That all my needs will be met. That his guidance will always provide. I want you to remember that. That even in the bleakest moment, in that darkest time, our shepherd is still there with us, taking care of us and providing for us. If you'll bow your heads and pray with me.